Thank you for staying till the last presentation, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. So I should say that behind the setup screen are my co-authors. So this is joint work with John Byers from BU and Michael Mitzenmacher from Harvard, and we are all computer scientists. So I bet most of you in the room know what Groupon is, and I'm sure a large fraction of you have actually used it. But for those of you who haven't, it's a large electronic commerce marketplace that connects consumers to local businesses by geographically and demographically targeting large email campaigns, right? It's actually a very simple business model. Consumers receive those discounts via email, and generally they like them. Groupon maintains 50% of the amount that it bills. Groupon maintains 50% of the amount that the coupon is sold for. So if you make the calculation, on average, this is a 75% discount that the merchant has to offer if you add the 50% discount initially with a coupon. So I wish I could see my slides. All right, great. And then obviously the appeal for merchants is that they hope to attract new customers that will go there once with a coupon, but more importantly, they are going to return later on and pay full price and become loyal customers. All right? So using this extremely simple business model, Groupon has grown tremendously over the past 4 years. So they started around 2008. They were hardly on the radar. And if you fast forward to 2012, they have approximately $3 billion of revenue and almost 200 million subscribers in their database worldwide. All right? This is a business model that has been widely emulated. I see Guild there. We saw a presentation there from Guild today. Yeah, that should have been, 10,000. So it has been widely emulated, but unfortunately, not everyone is doing so well. So buy with me, I don't know if you remember it. Maybe if you lived in Boston and New York, you remember their coupons. They were not doing very well. After laying off approximately 75% of their personnel, they were actually acquired by Guild. And this is what today is Guild City. In fact, just in the last 6 months of 2011, 800 of these DL websites folded, right? So this is a business in a lot of turmoil. This has been reflected in the price of Groupon in the stock market. I don't know if you're following it. The IPO price was approximately 28 to 30 bucks, if I remember correctly. It went down to 250. That's very low. And now it's trading at about $6. So it's quite fascinating. So one of the things that we wanted to do with this work is try to understand whether this is a viable business model. There are many divergent opinions. Can we learn anything by studying data? The second thing is we realized that the marketing literature, at least to us as computer scientists, did not offer an answer to the following question. When you mess with your promotional strategies, when you offer discounts, how might that impact your reputation as a business, right? And there are small nuggets of knowledge here and there, but I could not find a conclusive answer. And if someone has one for me, I would love to hear it. There is, however, anecdotal evidence. So I will quickly point to 2 examples that should be familiar to everyone. One is, of course, JCPenney. They recently started messing with their promotional strategies, and we all know what happened. They went from an everyday, this incessant sales model to everyday low prices, and consumers just simply stopped shopping. The other example in my mind is Amazon. They tried dynamic pricing back in the day, so if they knew that I really wanted a particular computer science textbook, they would charge me more. And then I would realize that maybe one of you would get it for a lower price, and then I would get upset, and I would go online, and I would complain about that. And then Amazon did not like that, so back in 2000, they said, we're never going to do dynamic pricing again. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're doing it again. So, all right. So how are we going to study Groupon? Well, here is our insight. We're going to look at Yelp, in fact. We're not going to look at Groupon. Why Yelp? Because after consumers purchase those coupons, they actually go to the business, the restaurant, the salon, the spa, whatever it is, and then they go back to Yelp and they review those businesses. So we're going to try to listen in, as the previous speaker said. But why Yelp? Why should we care about Yelp? So you've all been trained to recognize deceptive reviews, right? So can you see it? Yeah, where is it? Someone is shaking it. No? All right, maybe you're all tired. Well, actually, it's on the left. So check this out. This business, this is a picture I took. They claim they have 4.5 stars on Yelp. Now I want you to look at the real Yelp rating. So I think this is the work either of the business or maybe a self-appointed brand manager who went there and gave them an extra half star. Another nice thing about Yelp reviews is that, like I mentioned, they actually indicate when someone used the Groupon. It's not perfect, but it works quite well. And more seriously, Yelp is absolutely huge. A couple of months ago, they broke a record. Now they have 100 million unique views per month. Every business pretty much is on Yelp. They have no way to opt out. There are a couple of very nice papers. One is from Mike Luca, who's sitting back there, who started that whole thing, connecting causally Yelp ratings to revenues. So increasing your Yelp rating by 1 star is causally associated with a 9% increase in your revenue, at least for restaurants, right? So if something harms your Yelp rating, you maybe want to know about that. We heard about deceptive reviews. Businesses care enough to manipulate their own image. Many reviews are fake. And finally, something that occurred to me as I was studying all these reviews is that these reviews are actually forever. Unlike word of mouth offline, where I might tell my friend that I did not like a business, if I mention that a specific hotel has bed bugs, it's there for posterity, to see and make purchasing decisions. So I think Yelp is quite important. So here is what we did. We collected a little bit of data. We monitored Groupon between January 3rd and July 3rd in 2011 in 20 large American cities. We collected every single deal that they ran. That's approximately 16,500 deals. We also collected data for Living Social. I'm not presenting that here. And then we linked up to Yelp. So for every business in our data set that we could, we found their Yelp page, and then we downloaded all the reviews for that business. And then we looked at who had reviewed that business and collected all the consumer reviews of the consumers who reviewed that business. And then we went out a bit more. To cut a long story short, we collected approximately 7 million reviews for 1 million merchants. All right, so this is our data set. Before I tell you what the data set says, let me tell you what Groupon says. So they claim that Groupon campaigns have the following 2 features. First, they get you advertising that works, and it's faster than, it gives you more and faster customers than radio, print, TV, billboards, whatever is up there. Very fast response, all right. And the second thing they claim is that you get great customers. 91% of them have declared that they're willing to go back to the business and spend some more money, all right? So if that's true, what might we expect to see in our data? 2 things. 1, increased word of mouth. What does that mean? More reviews on Yelp after a Groupon campaign. 2, if these are satisfied consumers and they're going to go back, well, their Yelp ratings better be good, right? So we should see Yelp ratings that at least are not unlike what that business has experienced before. Here is how we're going to do that. This is our data set, essentially, all right? Here I only have 3 businesses out of the thousands in our data set. They all have reviews that they got before the Groupon offers that happened at different time intervals, and reviews that they got after the Groupon offers. I'm just going to align everything, and I'm going to call this time 0. All right, the Groupon offer is time 0. So I have 1 day before Groupon, 1 day after Groupon. That's how I count time. And then I'm going to plot a few things. So there is a lot going on in this figure. Bear with me. Let me explain. So 0 here is the day of the Groupon offer for all these businesses. Along the bottom, the gray bars, this is the daily volume of reviews for all these businesses. How many reviews are those businesses getting, let's say, 90 days before Groupon? All right? The darker bars that you see here is the subset of those reviews that actually mention the keyword Groupon. All right? Pretty simple. And what do you observe? Sure, Groupon is right. Immediately, from day 1, the review volume goes up by, what is that, maybe 75%. And a lot of that increase is actually by reviews that mention the keyword Groupon. That's great. A bit more worryingly, let's look at the top line. So every one of these single dots, let's see if I can name it one, all right, is the average rating of the businesses in our data set on that specific day. So this is not cumulative. This is the average star rating of the reviews left that specific day. Is that clear? That's very important. All right? And then the black line is a 30-day moving average that I have actually reset just for visualization, right? I'm not messing with anything. At day 0. And what happens? There is a 0.2 more or less star gap. That's pretty bad. So, sorry, I mentioned all these things. We can break down users along another dimension. We can take those reviews that mention Groupon, right, these ones, and we can compare them to the ones that do not mention Groupon, and then the gap is even bigger. It's half a star. That's pretty huge. And then we can look at 180 days out. And I guess I've spoiled the surprise here because I have it on my slide. But what happens is that most of these coupons expire 180, like 6 months after you buy them. You cannot use them after 6 months. So what happens here? There is a second bump because all these consumers are like, oh, I have this coupon. I should go and use it or it's going to expire. And then I should go back to Yelp and complain. All right, so this is what's happening here. And finally, the last observation is I keep collecting data on these businesses, even though we did this project approximately a year ago. And I have noticed that the effect is lasting, right? So well beyond the expiration of the Groupon offer, these businesses actually get reviews that are nowhere close to what they were getting a year ago, which I cannot explain yet. All right, that's all great, but why is that happening? I think that's what we want to know. And I don't really have a conclusive answer, but I have some hypotheses that I can test. The first one is a common theory in marketing that consumers that somehow buy something earlier are better suited to the product. You can imagine that I love Harry Potter, the second Harry Potter book comes out, I'm the first to buy it, the first to review it, my score is very high. Fine. I don't think that's what's going on here, but I will control for that. The other hypothesis, we sort of came up with them because, like I said, there was not much in the literature that we could draw from. So one thing that we were hearing is that, well, we all know that these coupons, they just attract crappy consumers. I could not find any reference to that, but I wanted to test for it. That somehow Groupon users are just more critical than their peers, all right? The third hypothesis that everyone seems to know is that, of course, the businesses that run Groupon are pretty crappy, right? And when I say crappy, what do I mean? Two things. One, they're not prepared for the huge volume of customers, right? And the second thing is that they actively discriminate against customers with a Groupon. That has happened to me. Not that it was awful, but it has happened to me. I think it's pretty reasonable. The fourth one is that maybe those coupons encourage experimentation. What do I mean by that? By absorbing some of the cost of you skydiving, I might encourage you to do it, right? You might not do it for $100. It's a new thing for you. You don't know if you're going to like it or not. But if I give it to you for $50, then you say, why not? And that might lead to a very negative experience or maybe a pleasant surprise. And finally, Duncan talked about deceptive reviews earlier. Another hypothesis that we want to test is the following. Businesses tend to manipulate their ratings, right? So if you think about that, after you run Groupon, you attract many real customers. So maybe the real rating is not the one before Groupon, but the one after Groupon, all right? Cool. So these are our hypotheses. Let me show you some data. I've been using some terminology rather casually. Let me define it. So a Groupon review is a review that mentions the keyword Groupon. A Groupon user is anyone who has written a Groupon review. So I look at my data. If you've written any review that mentions Groupon, I will call you a Groupon user. And a Groupon business is a business that runs Groupon. All right. So hypothesis one. All right, let's take all the businesses with 100 reviews. Oops, sorry. Rank the reviews, compute the average star rating. Guess what? Sure, earlier reviews are higher than later reviews. So I'm going to control for that, but it's not very interesting. So let's keep that. Second hypothesis. Groupon businesses are bad businesses. First, let's look at the outcomes of these businesses. So here, what that funny shape is the outcome of distributions. I take your rating. You're a business. I take the difference between your rating after Groupon and before Groupon. I compare it to mine. Maybe you did well. I did not do well. And indeed, we see a lot of dispersion. So these are businesses that actually improve their ratings. And then there is a long tail of businesses that did poorly. So maybe can we somehow figure out when Groupon works and when it doesn't, for what type of business it does and what type it doesn't? We'll try to do that. So just as a nugget, definitely for some businesses it doesn't work very well because, again, I realized when I checked yesterday, I think, then that 10% of businesses in my dataset have actually closed since they ran Groupon, and on average they closed within a year, considering that most coupons have an expiry date of 6 months. That's 6 months after, oh wow, 1 minute. That's 6 months after they ran their campaigns. Okay, let me speed up and do everything else in 1 minute. So the other hypothesis is that somehow Groupon businesses discriminate. Here is a typical review about that. Here's how I'm going to test about that. Groupon deals come with different terms and conditions. So approximately 30% of the businesses in my data set ran a cap deal, so they sold a limited amount of coupons. And the other one is that some of them required reservations before you could go and use your coupon. All right? So I'm going to check how these businesses did compared to others that did not require reservations. Maybe these businesses were better prepared. Are Groupon users by nature more critical? Again, in the interest of time, no. I looked at the reviews when they were reviewing other businesses that had not run Groupon and compared the ratings with those of their peers. They're just more moderate. Who are these Groupon users? Actually, that was quite interesting. If you look at them on Yelp, they're much better connected than their peers. They have twice as many friends, twice as many fans, twice as many reviews, twice as many firsts, twice as many votes. And they write better and longer reviews. They're mavens, if you like, Malcolm Gladwell. All right. Experimentation. That's what I mean. Something to protect your banana. Right? That was a deal. A deal yesterday. How do you measure experimentation? It seems quite tough, right? So can I have another 1 or 2 minutes? All right. Thank you. So how does one measure experimentation of someone that they don't know? Well, I'm going to look at your reviews, and I'm going to ask the following 2 questions. Have you been to a restaurant that serves the same, or a business that serves the same type of cuisine, or is the same type of massage, or whatever before? Have you been to a Chinese restaurant before? If not, this is not an experimental experience for you. Same for a zip code. Have you ever ventured out to 02139? If yes, this is not an experimental review. This is my proxy, all right? Unsurprisingly, Groupon encourages experimentation, not shocking at all. So Groupon users are 4 times more likely to experiment. But what we want to know is what ratings these experimental reviews lead to. To do that, we have a mathematical model. I won't go into details, but essentially it allows us to ask questions like the following. How does the probability of a 1-star review change, let's say, with using a coupon, experimenting, and all the things that we want to ask, right? And here's what we get. I was told to not get too quantitative, so I deleted 1 column from my results, the 3 stars. So very briefly, forget about intrinsic decline. That doesn't explain anything. Grumpy Groupon users. No, they're not grumpy. They just give you fewer 1-star reviews and fewer 5-star reviews, but more 4-star reviews than their peers. They're just more moderate. Bad businesses. Actually, that surprised me a lot. Businesses that capped their deals or required reservations did much worse than their peers. Why? My explanation is that these are exactly the types of businesses that self-identify as having limited capacity, and then you call them up to make an appointment, make that reservation, and they tell you should come back in 6 months, right? So consumers, you see a lot of that in reviews, are very angry about that. Consumer experimentation, again, maybe unsurprisingly, many more negative reviews, many more positive reviews. And then after controlling for all these things, there is unexplained variance in our data. So controlling for all these things, Groupon users, consumers that mention Groupon in their reviews during the period of the offer, they provide substantially lower reviews, but so do those consumers that do not mention Groupon. And of course, I do not know if they have used Groupon or not, just to be clear, but this is quite surprising and something that I want to look more into. All right. Okay, in the interest of time, I will skip the fake reviews because I don't think it explains much. That's what you should take away. Other takeaways. We were surprised by how much we could learn about Groupon by studying Yelp. That was quite surprising to us, especially given that the data was not given to us. That's public data. A lot of insights there. Second, if you run a Groupon, lay out the red carpet. These are well-connected customers that are going to review you. Groupon, I don't think, is well-suited for companies that have limited capacity. If you decide to run a Groupon and you're doing your strategy and analysis, you should take your current Yelp rating into account and decide whether paying the 0.2 on average star cost is something worth doing. It might be worth doing, right? Groupon as a business, I think it has to break that link with bad ratings. And in fact, I hear that they got rid of Andrew and the cat. And so I think one thing that they can do is stop maximizing growth. This is not a strategy that works for a business like Groupon. They're not Facebook. There are no network externalities in this business model. Anyone can replicate it. And maybe focus instead on providing quality leads to merchants and quality offers to consumers. Thank you, and sorry for going over time.